Hi, boys and girls. This is Mike, your host of Craft Beer Storm, also founder, owner, brewer at Bear Brewing Company in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Today we have a nice podcast for you. We're going to Atlanta, Georgia, where Tim, Dennis, and Brian Hewitt, the Beer Guys Radio. They have a great podcast, and they're also on radio stations around the country, which is awesome. And they're just preaching the gospel of craft beer, and they have a lot of good ideas. And let's get to it. Hey, this is Mike with Tim, Dennis, and Brian Hewitt from Beer Guys Radio. How are you guys doing?
Good, Mike. How are you today?
Doing really well.
I'm good. It's raining up here in New Hampshire. I don't know how it is down there. You're in Georgia, right?
We are in Georgia. It's cooling down a little bit, but we're still plenty hot down here.
Oh, you are. Yeah. No, I was listening to your podcast. It's really awesome. We were talking about it a little bit, and you have a lot of structure to it. I don't know. I'm like a CPA as well. I'm an auditor, but I also own a brewery and I brew. But I think I like the structure. So, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. We were talking about, like, some guys.
Okay.
They just throw this podcast together. They just sit around and drink and talk about random things that have nothing to do with beer, like their girlfriends or whatever. What they did last night. It's like ridiculous.
Sure.
But I like what you guys are doing.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, so let's I appreciate you being on. Maybe we'll start with your story, how you got started with the podcast and your efforts. Where are you now? Where you're looking ahead? I think you're on the radio too. Okay. You're on some radio stations, I think, right?
We are. Yep, we
awesome.
are a syndicated radio show. We're on 13 stations across the U.S. right now, and we've tripled that this year. We're looking to add more. Wow. We've been received pretty well there. We're very excited about that. But how we got started, so back in 2015, my original co-host has since left the show, and I'll get into that in a moment, but he was a program director at a local radio station here in Atlanta and had the idea to do a craft beer program. And a mutual friend connected us. I was very involved with the local beer scene and moderated an online forum for beer. It's Reddit ATLbeer, a big Georgia beer forum, and knew quite a few of the people here. So we had a discussion, and after a couple meetings over beer, just like it should be, we decided that we would proceed with this. We wanted to do the show. We spent probably 3 months talking about the concept of the show, and you mentioned the structure. We wanted to have a structure to it, but still keep it kind of easy, flowing, conversational, and have a good time with it, but at the same time be informational, educational was kind of our goal. So we started off just really small and, to be honest, kind of a passion project, just something fun that we wanted to do on one station here in Atlanta. And we were about 4 months into the show, and someone out of Huntsville, Alabama heard the program and said they wanted to carry it. And that's what kind of gave us the drive to look at syndicating. So we did syndicate the program. We've been adding, additional stations at every opportunity. And we've grown up to where we are now. So 13 stations on the radio. We're growing the podcast, social media, and sorry guys, I'm getting a ton of feedback right now. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
I can hear you just fine.
We're okay now.
So it's 13 stations in 9 different states, which is, I think really impressive that the show's taken off like that. Really like that. It's cool to know that, you're talking about beer and people are listening to you, and, Washington and Oregon and all over the place. And we've got people who are downloading the show, pretty regularly in Germany and Sweden. It's great,
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah, I know. I was listening to it. I thought it was just a podcast. And then I'm like, yeah, station XYZ. I'm like, oh man, these guys are syndicated. They're on the radio. So
yeah, that's why we put that in there.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I think
give some love to our radio affiliates. They've been good to us there for sure.
That's awesome.
They definitely have.
That's awesome. Preaching about beer. That's awesome. Or craft beer, excuse me. So yeah, we're kind of local. That's what we kind of try to strive in, promoting local products, local beer, if you go down to your store. And the reason why I started this was, I think I could probably, pull some information together a little bit better than others. But also I go into stores and I see these huge beer aisles with just 90% of this big beer, quote unquote crafty beer, not craft beer. These large companies are just putting this stuff out and packaging it up in like a $12 suitcase, for 24 cans. And, I think I always say it's better than just buy 24 bottles of water and drink that. Sure. It's more healthy for you instead of drinking that and drinking beer. So it kind of annoys me. And, the craft beer scene has been going on. I mean, I've been a brewer. We're going to turn 4 this year. And, it's been going on for longer than that, craft beer. And it's been in waves. I guess the last time was 1990, and then there was a boom and a bust. But I think the craft beer scene is here to stay because everything's trending local. So we're trying to promote local. And, one of the questions I'd ask you is what do you think about local beer and adding local ingredients to beer and the whole community farm-to-table thing? I mean, what's your position on that?
Well, with the local beer, local beer is going to be fresher beer. If you get it from someone who's down the street, around the corner, and people are really starting to, or not starting to, but it continues to progress where that's what people want. And here in Georgia, we've had kind of another boom over the last couple of years due to some changes to our laws that allowed our craft breweries to direct sell out of their tap rooms. And prior to 2015, they couldn't do that at all. They had kind of a small change in 16, and then in 2017, we actually got direct sell. So we just passed the 1-year point of doing that. So local beer, small business, community supported. These are small business owners creating jobs, creating a product, and you really get a sense of community at your small brewery. It's someone you can go in, they know it's your own Cheers bar. You go in, they know your name, you can share a beer and have a good time. So, as far as the local ingredients go, it's great to, again, support more local business. And one thing that I think a lot of people may not think of when they think of local business is the closer you get your ingredients to where your brewery's from, that lessens the impact on the environment. We recently talked to Riverbend Malt House out of Asheville, North Carolina, and they supply craft malt to breweries in the South. And I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it really reduced, the emissions and the impact on the environment by working with local farmers to get those grains, to get your adjuncts, your fruits, or what have you, to put into your beer.
That's a great point that you bring up. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
In addition to that, just having less of an impact, getting fresher material to put into your beer. When you pick something local, you're putting something in your beer that the big guys that distribute nationally can't do. They don't have those local ingredients, so you get a touch of the local flavor, and that's something that's unique to your local brewery. So that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean the environment, the point that you brought up about the environment. I mean, I didn't really think about that, but it does. I mean this grain, might come from overseas, or these hops might come from a long distance. Maybe if there's local hop growers, I'm not sure what the hop scene is in Georgia. Or even manufacturing the beer and shipping it across the country in trucks, which emit like fumes of pollution into the air. I mean, just thinking about it that way. I mean, you're helping a local business, you're helping your local neighbor, but you're also lessening the impact on the environment, which is a great point to bring up.
Right. When you think of all the steps that go through from that grain being planted to, becoming malt and the barley that's in your beer until it's poured into your glass, there's a lot that it goes through to make that journey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then, well, that's right. The whole brewing process itself. I mean, a lot of people come in and they're like, oh, yeah, how long does it take you to brew beer? I'm like, about 3 weeks. Or like, really that long? I'm like, yeah, you don't just add beer powder to water and make beer. it takes a while, and it's a process, and the whole journey adds to that process as well. And then beer, like you said, is fresh, local. It's fresh. It's good. You know where it comes from. A lot of breweries outsource their brewing, and they instead of making it at the local brewery where it was originated, they might make it in another larger brewery with several other beers, and it kind of loses its taste and what the original owners wanted it to be. So you never know what you're going to get. But if you go local, you know what you'll get.
Right.
And in my opinion, it's hard to beat an IPA directly from the source. That level of freshness when you're drinking it there in their tap room, you can't replicate that. I don't even know if you can replicate that buying it from your local store. I love doing that. I really like that about the local movement and the availability of tap rooms. So there's so many reasons to go local. It just doesn't make sense not to.
Yeah, and especially with the new hazy, very hazy, hop forward IPAs, those can fade quickly. And if you're not getting them at the source, you're just not getting them at their prime.
That's right. And I was very disappointed at the GABF when they have the New England category, right? New England IPA, and there wasn't one New England brewery that won.
Not a single, right?
What the heck is going? What was that about?
Yeah. We reported that in the last show too. It was kind of a surprise. But
yeah.
I kind of wondered about that because it's such a new style and it hasn't been judged on its own yet. New England's known for it, but who knows what everybody's doing around the country because everybody's eyes are on New England. But
I guess I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know, but I know Vermont. Like last year, I had a table at the Great American Beer Festival. I'm like, I don't care. I'm a small brewery, but I don't care. I'm thinking big. So we go there. We have a table, but there wasn't one Vermont brewery there last year, and I'm not sure what the Vermont brewers are thinking. Maybe they're boycotting it or something. I don't know what the story is, but I'm sure if they were there, and I'm not sure if they entered their beers into the competition or not. But that's where I think the whole thing originated. They had this Conan yeast, that hazy IPA.
Yeah, from Alchemist, right?
I think Vermont's like the origin of that style. This is what I think. But they weren't there. So.
It could be the case where some of these brewers were hesitant to send their beers off because they couldn't ensure the product was as fresh as they wanted it to be by the time the judges got a chance to drink it. So I've heard people put that theory out there. I don't know if there's any truth to that because, honestly, I wasn't there.
I know you talk about the Alchemist and Heady Topper. They go into stores and they say this beer must be refrigerated. And if they go into a store and it's on the shelf, they won't sell to that store anymore. Done.
Right, and that's something, talking about the judging with the GABF, that had to be a difficult category to represent properly because if you ship a beer across country, even if it got there and was judged within a couple days or so, it will have spent a week probably at absolute minimum, at room temperature traveling across the country.
That is true, and you won't know what happened. Even if you package it in some refrigerant or something like that, like you don't know. They have so much beer that goes in. Some guy could just take it out, put it on a shelf. You don't know what could happen to that thing, so you can't really ensure the freshness. So that is another interesting theory as well. But I bet you that's true. So, we talk about the craft beer business. It is a business. And what do you think? What do you think are some of the challenges of craft beer business today?
I think right now one of the biggest things is the growth and the size and the market that you want to target. If you had started a brewery, say, 10 years ago, and you had aspirations of being a regional or national brewery, that would have been a good goal. The market was primed to do that. But we've seen, several things happen recently, like Green Flash with their expansion to Virginia Beach. This was a brewery that was highly popular, had extreme growth, but when they did their expansion was right at the time when we were having a big shift to this local and even hyper-local hyper-local beer that people wanted to go for. So becoming a larger brewery, I think at this point would be a tough goal. That would not be somewhere, if I was to start a brewery, to go out and be regional, I think would be a bad idea. You want to serve your local community, and you can do that at scale, to a certain amount of scale. But that's what people want now. And that ties into the fact, because there is such a boom in the industry, the Brewers Association says that it's an almost certainty that we'll hit 7,000 breweries in the U.S. before the end of the year. So when you go out to a beer bar or a package store, whether you're looking at tap handles or shelves, there's just so much competition to get on those taps, to get on those shelves. If you're a small brewery expanding 3 states away, you're going to be totally unknown, with the exception of a few that are just kind of the darlings of the industry. So I think that's a big challenge, is competing first in the local market to get local market share, and then, growing beyond your borders if you have success, and decide if that's something that's a good idea for you.
It's just so amazing how I've just seen this whole beer industry change, like since I started 4 years ago. And, the regional guys, well, the national guys were threatening, to just squeeze out the local guys and price them out. And then the regional breweries got bigger, and but now the smaller guys are just, thumbing their noses at these bigger guys and saying, hey, we're small, we can pivot. If there's a new beer that people want, we'll just change it up and make a new beer. That's no problem. Whereas these larger companies, it's like a ship, like a massive ship that's going in one direction.
Yeah.
It's hard to turn that thing left, by 90 degrees. You got to start turning about a couple miles, like 10 miles behind or something to go.
A big turn radius.
Yeah. So...
and the thing is the industry is only growing at a rate of 5% now. So the years of 20% growth are no longer there, and under 20% growth with fewer breweries, you could almost make anything and be assured of crazy growth and explosive action in terms of business. But now you've got more competitors and you've got a smaller amount of growth. The industry is still growing, but you've got a lot of people trying to get a much smaller piece of the pie.
No, you don't want to get into this business and just think you're going to get a hoard of cash like right away. People are going to go nuts about your beer. I mean, it happens once in a while, but it's like you said, the growth is smaller. It's much smaller than it was previously.
Sure. And another thing that's really kind of a challenge now is outdated beer laws. We just saw some craziness happen in New Jersey, where they had changed. They'd years ago they'd allowed the breweries to start selling beer directly from their tap rooms to drink on premise, and then some to take away. Well, the breweries were really successful. They grew and they started attracting locals, and now they just passed some laws to crack down on their ability to hold events or even serve food at the breweries. Basically, kind of hamstringing these breweries. So you've got issues like that spring up all around the country in different states, where you've got these insane beer laws that depress the market. So that's another big challenge for the craft beer business. But I think it's getting better. I think it's getting better with time.
I guess over time, it will get better. But this is another reason why I started this podcast, because still I see 90% of the beer in these stores, in local stores, this big beer. There are forces out there, and you cannot deny it. It's these larger beer companies who have hordes of cash, throwing it at people. There's distributors that are buying tap lines. I don't care if they get mad at me. That's the truth. Because I can't get a tap line when I go into some bars. It's these stores that say, I don't want to deal with self-distributors. I just want to deal with the distributors. That pisses me off, because I'm a small brewery, and I think it's ridiculous. And for New Jersey to pass a law like that, I didn't realize they did that. There's got to be forces behind it. There's got to be forces behind it that are, lining the pockets of these legislatures who need to be voted out. So if you're in New Jersey, vote these guys out. They're crooks. This is unbelievable that they do this to a small brewery. I mean, that pisses me off too, just to hear that.
And Brian, I think if I remember correctly, you said there was a bit of an update to that, to where the governor did say, hold on a minute, I don't know if this is right, correct?
There is, but at the moment they're just looking into it. As far as I can tell, I believe it went into effect. So right now, the breweries are basically very, very limited on what they can do in terms of events. But the governor is looking into it. That was the update that I saw today. So who knows what's going to happen? But at least somebody in the government there realizes that something shady just happened.
But Mike, you're right. The industry as a whole is very, I don't know if pro is the right word, but it strongly favors the larger breweries and the distributors. And talking about changing these laws, I'll say this to anyone listening to this: if you're in a state that you don't like the laws, do something about it. It doesn't have to be a brewery or anything. Get your community involved, because here in Georgia, our Brewers Guild worked for many years to change things, and there wasn't a lot of public awareness that these were trying to change. It was very centralized to just the brewers, so the issue didn't get as much attention. And probably, around 2014, our Brewers Guild, started making some noise, so to speak. The craft beer community started a grassroots effort, and it got noticed. And these changes are more than likely going to be incremental. You're not going to go into the old and tried 3-tier system and change everything overnight. But you can make incremental changes, and sometimes that takes years, to get that done. But it's definitely worth fighting to make that happen.
And I think your radio show and podcast and mine. I mean, that's why I wanted to have you on as well. I'm trying to find people to tag team with to kind of just go in front of these legislatures and just say, hold on, guys. There was a ridiculous law in New Hampshire here. I'm a small brewery, right? So I'm a nano brewery. If I want to serve pints, I have to do like some food, right? Otherwise, they can only have a 4 ounce of each beer that I have, and then they have to leave. So the law they passed here, we were all waiting for it, was to rescind that food element. And nano breweries, could go ahead and serve pints, 2 pints. But apparently now it only applies to beverage manufacturers, which are huge breweries, which don't need that law passed for them. I mean, it doesn't matter. So I'm like, what the heck? Where was everybody, right? And I mean, I probably should have been up at the legislature, but, unfortunately I have to work. So I can't really have a lot of time to go up there, but I'm trying to figure out how to do that. But stuff like that is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Mike, did I hear you say that you self-distribute?
I do self-distribute, yes. And
that's something our breweries can't do. That distribution isn't allowed in Georgia.
Right.
So that's one thing. We had a point where we had no self-distribution and no direct sales. So it was very hard for a small brewery in Nano to open up because of the scale that they had to open at to be profitable. They couldn't make any real revenue at the tasting room. They had to sign a distribution agreement because they couldn't self-distribute. So most of their money was out the door, not just counting the fact that all the money they put out to just open a brewery, but then every bit of beer they sold had to go through a distributor.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think it's the same thing in Virginia, I believe. I spent some time down there. But they can't self-distribute. You can sell out of the tap room, I believe, but you can't. You have to go through a distributor in order to get your stuff into stores. But I mean, the margin, if you can get people in the tap room, the margin's the best in the tap room. So, yeah. And do you know Mitch Steele? Did you talk to Mitch Steele?
I do know Mitch Steele. We do know Mitch, yes.
Tell him to call me, okay? I'm trying to get a hold of him. I want to get him on the podcast, and I keep emailing him. We keep trading Facebook things, because originally he's from up here. He started at the Budweiser plant up here in New Hampshire, and that's where he started, and then he got famous with Stone, and now he's doing New Realm. Which and I think you know the story. Like, they're going into the where Green Flash said they were going to close that facility. They're going in there and they're gonna do some good things. So I'm glad he's doing that. But I got to get a hold of him. I'm trying to.
I believe that tap room is open and running. And
no kidding.
A lot of what keeps Mitch Steele busy is he's running back and forth between breweries in different states now.
Wow.
So
and his residence is still in California, so he's all over the place.
Oh yeah, he had some post. He was on Facebook about California. I'm like, what are you doing in California? You're supposed to be in Atlanta or Georgia. Where is his? Is it in Atlanta or?
Yeah, the breweries in Atlanta. He has a daughter that's high school age and didn't want to move her while she was finishing that. So he still resides in California, works here at the Atlanta brewery, and now Virginia as well. So good luck out there, Mitch. We hope you get some rest sometime. So
yeah, maybe call me in the car on the way down. He has no time. That's why he's not calling me. I know. But that's awesome. No, he's doing some good things. Awesome beer. Stone. What he did for Stone was really fantastic. They're still making great beer, but he's a good guy. And talking about big beer, I mean, and I started this podcast too to try to educate people, not just beer geeks. Because everybody knows what stouts, and they know what a Hefeweizen is, but most of the population is just, beer is this lager, this like bland lager that's being put out. And yeah, I'm going to get a 6-pack of this great, I like lagers, but the stuff that the big beer is putting out is really not, it's more watery. But what can we say to those people, in terms of craft beer and how it compares to the big beer product?
It's something that, and I'll say this, and I think, from talking to here, Mike, you and I may differ on this. I think big beer puts out a quality product. Mm-hmm. It's just not a product that appeals necessarily to, a craft drinker. Like you said, it's closer to water. There's a little beery taste there. And, Americans have been conditioned to that being beer. And either you like it or you don't. We have a friend who we tried to introduce to craft beer, and he said he really enjoyed trying our beers, but his favorite was still sitting back with a 12-pack of Bud Light and drinking through those, And but for the people who are kind of want to make that transition, let's say they have been drinking Bud Light or Miller Lite or what have you forever, and they're interested in craft. A lot of times their first introduction is to it. They hear about IPA, so they go out and they grab a big West Coast IPA. And it just, totally punches them in the palate and it turns them off from craft beer. Mm. If you like your Pilsners, if you like those, those light lagers and Pilsners and that, there's a lot of craft breweries are making those now, and even more of them lately. We have a brewery here down by the Atlanta airport, Arches Brewing, that specializes in lagers, and they do a lot of really nice beers that are really lighter on the palate and are fantastic gateway beers to introduce someone to craft beer. And, a lot of these breweries, that the area they're in is not necessarily what I would call a craft-centric area. So they do a lot of education, bringing people in and saying, try this or that. We also have, they're a Macro-owned brewery, but we have the Terrapin ATL Brew Lab at SunTrust Park here at the Braves Stadium. And they still get a lot of people that come in and want their tall cans of Miller or what have you. And they'll suggest, hey, we've got this Pilsner on tap. If you like this beer, try this, So you don't have to jump in both feet to the big, heavy, don't start out with a 19% stout. Those are fantastic, and maybe you'll work your way up to those. But if you like Pilsners, try a craft Pilsner. It's going to give you a little more flavor. It's going to be a little cleaner. It's going to be a local product that is made by a small business right there in your backyard. And, that's something you can appreciate.
No, I noticed that a lot of the breweries are, making. When people come in here too, we have like 2 double IPAs on tap because that's what everybody wants. We'll have a stout and maybe we'll have a porter or coffee porter, and they're like, "All right, what's the lightest beer that you got?" I'm like, maybe the stout, I guess. So what we did is we made a wheat beer, like a Citravit, and people are digging that. Like if they don't want, the other beers, but it is a better beer, I guess, or more flavorful beer than, the bigger beers. And the big beers, I guess you can't tell people what they like. I guess they're going to like what they want. And, so we don't want to knock the bigger beers, but we want to try to introduce them to this local craft beer that, well, I think it's better, but we're trying to convince them that it is,
well, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Adding on to that, I just want to throw this out there that, the big beers out there, that's the one-size-fits-all beer. If you want one with some more local flair, a little character, a little bit of nuance to it, you pick the local equivalent of it. You get the lager. You don't go to a different style. I think that's the biggest selling point. It's like, do you want to drink the one-size-fits-all beer, or do you want to drink the beer that's more tailored to what your tastes are? And I think that's the whole appeal of craft. And I think that once people realize that, they're sold on it.
Right. And I think introducing them to it in a manner like that, not just like slap them in the face or give them a Russian Imperial Stout or, or just some super hoppy IPA that'll just knock them over. I mean, that's not the way to get them in. But I think, as you mentioned, maybe the Pilsners or I like Pilsners. I like lagers, like really good lagers. I like them. Is the way to get them over to get them educated on craft beer. So that's a good strategy.
I am drinking a local craft black lager right now. So
a black lager.
A black lager, yes. Nice and roasty, kind of porterish, but a little lighter on the body.
Really?
The Silent World from Creature Comforts over in Athens, Georgia. So
wow.
Very tasty beer.
Wow,
that's a great beer. I'm coming around on the Pilsners and lagers. I've not been one that would typically drink those. My go-tos are typically IPAs, but I'm enjoying them more and more as I'm seeing more and more options that are craft available, because I'm just not into again, the one-size-fits-all lagers and pilsners out there that resemble more water than anything else. But yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of you made me you piqued my interest, and I would love to taste that, but I can't because I'm in New Hampshire and that's in Georgia. Yeah. And I had somebody actually on one of my other podcasts, and he's creating a platform where brewers can ship their beer. It would be like a B to C, right? Or brewer to consumer, business to consumer, where they can order beer. But the problem there is that it's a state-by-state thing, where some states allow that and some states don't. And if you do want to go into a certain state where that person resides, you have to pay the state a certain fee, like a yearly fee, like a license, so that they can have the right to buy that beer, which I think is, I don't know. I mean, how did wine do it? I mean, I know wine can be shipped all over the place, from point A to point B.
Wine got a lot of concessions because of the farmers. And I'm not sure how many states have this. I imagine quite a few. But Georgia has what they call the farm winery exemption.
Okay.
And if you actually own a farm here where you grow, I don't remember the exact percentage. Brian, do you recall how much of it has to be on your farms?
I want to say 10%, but I don't even know. I'm just...
Yeah, it's a small percentage. But basically, if they meet this farm winery exemption, they were able to do direct sales before breweries could. They could do mail order and many things, and a lot of that came under the fact that they classified it as more of an agricultural product, so they got concessions for that.
And I think that I know I've ordered beer directly from breweries before and had it delivered to me here. Not sure about the legalities of that. I know it's easier to do that. I'm not sure that breweries here could ship out of state, because I don't think they're allowed to directly sell like that to a person. I don't think that they probably couldn't legally do it because of Georgia laws, even though it's out of state. I'm not 100% sure on that. We'd have to talk to a legal expert.
There's got to be a way to do this, and I'm trying to think about it, because Uber came on the scene, right? You would figure, if you're going to pick somebody up, you would need a taxi medallion or a license or be registered with something. But Uber just came on and just did it. They're like, okay, you need a ride? Here's my app. Tell me where you want to go.
Yeah.
And some random guy with an Uber sticker on his car picks you up. And it's all a transaction via, debit card or whatever. And they got away with it. So I don't know. I mean, there's got to be a way where, breweries can go directly to consumer and bypass the whole distribution thing. Like if I wanted to sell my beer in Massachusetts, for example, I mean, I'd have to find a distributor. And no distributor is going to take me because I'm too small. So I can't. And a lot of people in Mass are like, you should have your beer here. I'm like, I can't do it.
Right.
You'll have to come up. But there's got to be a way, and I'm trying to figure this out. I'll let you know.
Well,
I'll keep you posted.
The real problem is you're dealing with a controlled substance. At least in the Uber scenario, cars aren't as well. They're not. There's no real laws regarding who can buy a car and when. They can't necessarily operate it, but you don't have the whole situation of a controlled substance or a specially regarded substance or whatever they consider alcohol. There's not the same level of restriction on the actual purchase and sale of it. because kids can own a car, they just can't drive it. You can leave a car to your grandchild or son or something like that. Not a big deal, and when they get legal, they can go drive it.
Yeah. I see wine is being shipped all over. I know they have this farm winery exemption, but there's also other. It's like very relaxed. I don't know if you listen to Gary V. He did. Gary V. does the wine library. So like they go online. That's how he grew his local parents' liquor store from 4 million to like 60 million in a couple of years. He just went on the internet. He was the first one to do it, and he just shipped wine all over the place. So,
and I think at least until recently, wine was viewed much differently than beer. Wine drinkers have always been considered, or at least in the modern era, to be of a higher class. And I even saw a billboard here in Atlanta. It said something to the effect of champagne taste on a beer budget. And beer's always got a bad rap as being lowbrow and something that people just drink to get drunk. And among craft drinkers, we've known for a while that there's a lot more to it than that. But I think even some people that aren't necessarily craft beer drinkers or know much about it are learning more just because of how much it's out there, that's not necessarily what it's all about. There's times when you drink a beer just because it tastes really good. We probably get a little snooty about it sometimes, looking for all these notes and flavors and mouthfeel and character in the beers, just like a wine drinker would, because a beer can be extremely complex.
And that's what I'm seeing too. It's trending, and as these generations are coming, whatever, the millennials and Generation X, Y, Z, they want more quality. They just don't want to buy like something, and I think it's maybe trending or the kind of gap is kind of closing between wine and beer. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, so talking to the Brewers Association and some larger brewers, they actually say that there is, from the wine and spirits industry, that they are a pretty big threat to craft beer, and that a lot of younger drinkers are choosing things like vodka, over beer now. So it's something that needs to be noted, and it's something that Big Beer likes to say when craft breweries talk about the dangers of Big Beer buying up breweries. Big Beer is always quick to say, hey, you guys need to be paying attention to, wine and spirits here. And, for a while, I think it was just kind of looked at as kind of their cry to brush away from them. But it sounds like, from talking to the Brewers Association, that it is something that should be noted, that there is a bit of a shift there. There's still growth in the beer sector. More consumers are still going to craft beer, but there is a bit of a shift in there into the wine and spirits categories. And even the alternate beverages that we're seeing now, something that I never thought would take off, but things like the hard seltzers, ciders, hard seltzer, and those types of beverages.
Right. They are. They're popping up all over the place, and you see people drinking those. Yeah, the hard.
That has a little bit to do also with the millennials tend towards, they're a little bit more health conscious, I think, than some previous generations were. So they are very easily lured in with any kind of reported health benefits or whatever, which I think is leading to, I've seen there's a company that opened up that I saw news for, and they were a non-alcoholic beer company. All they made was non-alcoholic beers, and they were, I forget the name of the company, but it was all very themed after running. So it was very fitness. It was like non-alcoholic beer for fitness fans. It was a really unusual thing, but apparently that's popular now. So can't really speak to that too well.
No.
It holds no attraction to me.
Not your area, huh, Brian?
No, I'm not going to be running too many marathons.
Oh, actually,
maybe tomorrow.
I'm training for one. I'm in pain. I have one at the end of October. It's the Marine Marathon outside of DC, and I've never run one before. And like my sister's like, well, we got a team and somebody dropped out. Do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, I always wanted to do it. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. So she got on the phone and called somebody. She says, all right, you're locked in. So
Brian and I have heard that you can mix beer and fitness. We don't have any personal real world experience to know that's true, so it could just be a rumor for all we know. But we've heard that that's possible.
I'm like the living proof, I guess, that you can. I got to fit. Yeah, so I got to finish that race. I'm going to finish that race, but I did 20 miles this past weekend. I got to do another 22 this weekend, and then I'm tapering down.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I just found the name of the brewery. You should look them up, drink some of their beers while you're running, and maybe have them on your podcast. They're Athletic Brewing Company. I believe they're all non-alcoholic brews. So,
oh, really?
That might be your answer, at least during training season.
Oh my God! Well, I'm here in a brewery. I mean, I'm doing the podcast. It's hard. It's very hard. Like I'll go into a room and I'll smell the hops of like we have a Galaxy. We have a double IPA made with Galaxy, and it's just so hard. It's just like, all right, I'm not going to have any, and I'm like, all right, just a little bit, because it's so good. Yeah, it's just so good.
Right.
So it's hard, but
it would be dangerous for me to work in a brewery. That would be, yeah.
But you guys, that's another question. But you homebrew, I guess, right? I think on your podcast you were talking about homebrewing.
So we have home. We were very, very active homebrewers until we started the show, to be honest with you. So it was something that we've been busy now with doing the show and doing events and things like that. And we haven't been able to homebrew in a while. We've still done some collaboration batches with other homebrewers and a few breweries. We're still passionate about it. We're actually working right now to improve some of the homebrew laws here in Georgia. We've got a few of our legislators behind us. There's just some things that need to be tweaked there. So we're still very passionate about homebrewing and would love to find the time to do a little more brewing again. But we dabble in it when we get a chance. We actually have one of our first collaboration beers being released this weekend at Reformation Brewery here in Georgia. So we're excited about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's a fun beer. It's a strawberry yuzu Berliner. I believe that's right. It was Berliner, right, Tim?
It was. Yep, sure is.
Yeah. Spruzu, yes.
That sounds great.
Berliner.
That sounds great. We got to swap. You got to send me some of that. I'll send you some of mine.
Do some trade ups there, yeah.
We'll exchange some. Exchange. Yeah, it's the only way I can get some. We can't say that on the air. Maybe I should edit that out. Well, if you ship it, if you ship it in via the postal service, like you're a felon.
That is correct. It is.
So we're not.
Yes, the postal service makes it a federal matter rather than just a company policy matter.
Oh yeah. It's a felony, so we're not going to ship it via postal service. It's okay.
There won't be any shipping. We'll just drive it up there.
I'll meet you halfway. Meet me at the marathon there. It's not too far, right? It's halfway.
There you go. Sounds good.
Easy.
I'll see you at the finish line. So, and another thing, the beer laws and job growth in your state. I mean, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. There's some interesting statistics on that.
Sure. We've seen just amazing growth here in Georgia since we improved our laws. 2015 and 2016, we got a little taste. It was a weird system, but the first kind of taste of direct sales at our brewery where you couldn't technically buy beer at a brewery, but you could buy a tour package that included, quote, free souvenirs to go. So that was the way our lawmakers got around letting breweries have direct sales, was by saying it was a souvenir. There was some mix up with that, and that got shut down for a few months, but then was back on. But then in 2017, there was a big push that to have the direct sales. On September 1st, 2017, you can now buy up to 288 ounces, so up to a case of beer at the brewery to go, and then you can stay at the brewery and drink. There's no limit except for a 3,000 barrel per year limit for the brewery. So with that, we saw just an amazing amount of growth, and I'm trying to find my stats here right now, but in 2016, I believe we had 20 breweries and brew pubs open in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, and then in 2017, we had another 10, I think. Well, let's see. Okay, I have it here. I had those numbers flips. In 2016, we had 10 breweries and brew pubs open here, which was 22.7% growth from the previous year. In 2017, we had 23 new breweries and brew pubs in Georgia, which was 38.9% growth. We've already had, I believe it's 12 open here this year. And, one of the big ones we have that's seen a lot of growth, and they're in the news now, they're highly controversial, but Scofflaw Brewing, who just made, their news got everyone in the UK angry. But they just told me the other day that they've added 40 jobs. They've been open 2 years and they have 40 employees there. And, you scale that up, if you look at a total of, 40 breweries, and let's say the average one has half a dozen employees, because we have some smaller ones there, that's 250 jobs created there. So, and then you think about the businesses that support them, from the maltsters to the hop growers, and, everybody supporting those, it has a big effect, on the industry. And so when our laws improved, more breweries opened, and, it's definitely good for the community. We're self-serving in that, Mike. We love beer, so we love seeing more breweries, but there are real benefits to the community. And, outside of the job growth and that, almost every brewery that I know has community involvement and gives back to their communities, whether it's through a direct charitable donations or just community improvement projects. A brewery isn't just a business. Anywhere you go, most breweries are going to be a part of the community that they're in, and try and enrich that community and the lives of people, and enjoy a good beer while doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think breweries, like towns that are run down and they've been just decrepit for years, are being resurrected by maybe a brewery coming in and just renovating a building, and then they see all these people coming in, and then restaurants, pop up, beside it, or coffee shops or stores, and that just helps the town in general, overall, and it helps the local businesses.
And there's even more than that. I maintain a massive events calendar of everything going on with the 70 whatever plus breweries we have. You're also employing independent musicians and food trucks that show up for various events. We got a ton of people coming around doing trivia. So you get little businesses doing trivia. You got people doing, like having their own small business doing yoga. Yoga is a big thing at breweries down here. And the change of the laws have made it possible for a brewery to open here that's direct sales only. Like, they don't put anything into distribution at all. It's all through the tap room, and that wouldn't have even been possible a few years ago before the laws changed. So it's the impacts are big. They're very, very big, which is why it surprises me to see a place like New Jersey that has seen these impacts happen come down with draconian laws. But, hopefully they can get that sorted out.
It's because there's draconian legislatures in there that need to be voted out. That's what it is. It's bizarre. When things don't make sense, there's something behind it. So,
all the money.
Yes. So we have to promote this and expose this stuff. I mean, this is ridiculous. I'm from New York originally. That's why I'm passionate about the region, and I hear that happening in New Jersey. I mean, that's ridiculous. What they're doing. It's just ridiculous. So what is, a lot of people say that there's like a craft beer bubble. I mean, we saw, pre-prohibition we're almost double of what it was pre-prohibition. I think it was like 3,000 breweries across the country. And then prohibition happened and it kind of wiped a whole bunch of them out, if not all of them. A couple of them survived. And then we had a big 1990s resurrection, and that fell apart. And what do you think about the trend today? I mean, I think it's here to stay. I see the number of wineries, maybe I'm wrong, but it's at least double of what the number of breweries there are now in the U.S., and I think there's a lot of room for growth. And people are trending towards your local brewery. I mean, in Germany, every town has a brewery, and you think about Oktoberfest from Munich, but no, every town has their own, like, Oktoberfest. What do you think about that?
Right. That's, as far as that goes with the bubble, there's going to be a point of saturation, Mike. I don't think we're at a bubble burst point right now. It's going to vary from region to region. You look at a state like Georgia, and we were way behind the times because of our laws. But if you look at somewhere like California or Oregon or Colorado, they've had a lot more growth, so there's less room for growth there. Not that there isn't any, but there's less. There's going to be certain areas where there's still a lot of room for growth. Here in Georgia, one thing we're seeing is we still have a lot of breweries open up in the metro area, but we're filling in a lot of these craft beer deserts where people are opening in smaller towns and kind of, like you said, a brewery in every town. We're steadily filling in to where, I wouldn't even say a good-sized town. We have some in some really small towns now. But what we're going to see, like you said, is a continued, I don't know if shift is the right word because I think we're there pretty good, but people want that local beer. They're going to do that. We're going to see some market correction. And this is, data that the Brewers Association has shared with us as well. We went to a talk with Bart Watson, the chief economist at the Brewers Association, and he said, we are going to see some brewery closures. But that's just part of a normal market growth. So when we see some close, we're definitely going to see people that are going to say, oh, there it is, the bubble's bursting. But it's just a sign of a healthy growing market. There's going to be some closures, but there will continue to be breweries opening as well. And depending on your region, you may still have plenty of room for lots more growth.
That's true. Yeah. And I would almost say that if there was a bubble, and I don't really think that it was, when we went from a couple years ago where we had 20% more per year growth, and we've gone down to 5, I'd say that was almost a bubble bursting if there was one. But I think that the entire industry was, it's like a giant cavity that water rushes into. It's going to keep rushing in, but you open the floodgates, you make it legal for these things to happen, and stuff is going to surge in immediately. But when stuff starts getting more full, it slows down a bit. There's still growth, but it's slower. And I think that's what we had. We had a very vibrant, youthful, exciting new market. Now it's becoming more, adolescent, teenage, a little slightly more mature. It's still good growth, but I don't foresee all of these breweries eventually closing down and there being tumbleweeds all across America where there used to be bars. I think most of the breweries are here to stay just because we're far from being anywhere near any kind of saturation point. There's still a lot of people out there that are underserved in terms of beers.
Yes, and I think with any explosion, there's going to be correction, but I think the long-term trend is an upward slope with breweries opening and closing. And it's been surprising, too, like the big guys went nuts, Green Flash, they have awesome beer, but they wanted to, dominate the country, and they went to every state, and what happened with the local thing is just like, what is this Green Flash stuff? I can go to, Joe's Brewery right in town, and he has fresh beer. And they pulled out of all those states, and then eventually I guess they closed. Are they still open, or they still have the brand, or?
So I think a group of people that were involved in the original company bought Green Flash, and I forget the name of the new company, but it exists to some extent in California. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't really follow up too much after they actually auctioned off the facility out in Virginia Beach, but it exists to a certain extent. I know there's a few others that have closed that are completely gone though.
Yeah. So it's just interesting who will be. It's like you would figure that the smaller guys would be the ones who'd be crushed and then they go out of business, but it's not the smaller guys, it's the larger guys, like these regional breweries that are either being bought out or just going out of business, because they can't pivot and they just went nuts, and they kind of, because when you expand and when you put beer in different states, you got to send salespeople after it, and there's supposed to be salespeople there trying to push your beer. And if there's not, no one's gonna. You'll have your initial push, but then they won't order it again. Unless you have salespeople just kind of chasing them, and because there's just so much competition, and that costs a lot of money.
Right.
I think New Belgium did it. I went to go visit them. Went to the GABF, and they're awesome. They have these shuttles that shuttle us up to Fort Collins to the brewery. They give us food and beer. It's awesome. Those guys are awesome. But when I went there, they said, "Yeah, we're happy with just staying where we are." And then all of a sudden, I saw them in New Hampshire, and they just went nuts with distribution. And since then, it was kind of a quick thing. They were in New Hampshire, and then all of a sudden they pulled out. So I think they're seeing that, no, we really can't. To be all over the country and being, far flung, it's going to take a lot of money. And I just see that every day with even Red Hook. They had a Red Hook facility here in Portsmouth. I mean, Red Hook's based in Washington. And then the Washington brewery said, all right, we're just not going to go national anymore. We're pulling everything back, and we're going to be in Washington State and have our local restaurant. And then they even changed the name to the Red Hook Brewery here. They call it Cisco now because they bought Cisco in Nantucket. And they changed the whole brewery here. They call it Cisco. But most of the stuff they're doing is contract brewing. They're not making their own beer, which is interesting because they have they just have these massive tanks and massive brewery. But it's just interesting to see this whole dynamic and what's next. And I think in one of your podcasts also, instead of the crazy IPAs, someone was going to go like opposite, like make these brute beers. I've read that, and I've heard that a lot lately. Like people are trending that way. Do you think that'll be the next big thing, or what do you think?
I personally don't think it'll necessarily be the next big thing, but I think it'll have its place. I've heard a few people say this is just going to be, kind of a flash in the pan, but I think it could have a place amongst all the other styles there. They're very crisp, very clean, and dry, a little bit of hop profile to them. They're enjoyable, and I say that, Brian, I guess we've tried probably 8 or 10 different ones at this point. And so far there's been a huge variation. So what we're seeing in Georgia right now, I think people are still trying to figure out the style, but the ones that I've tried that are closest to what I understand the style to be are pretty nice beverages, and it may not be the first choice that like a hophead goes for, whether it's West Coast or New England, but I think they could have a place.
Yeah.
I think this already is a trend, partially because it's new and nobody knows what it is, so everybody's trying to figure it out. And that alone, the unknown, the experimental, and the opportunity to define what this style of beer is has made it into a trend, because I'm thinking about all of the breweries locally who are suddenly doing it. And this is just something that started at one brewery in San Francisco, and now I wouldn't say all the breweries locally have done it, but it's got to be at least a dozen that have at this point, and I know it's happening other places. So I think it is a trend. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's got some legs to it where some other things did not. For example, glitter beers; those did not get legs.
Thank you so much for not getting legs, glitter beers.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Now, how about the sour beers? I mean, everybody's nuts about sour. I mean, I think a good sour beer is very good. I lived in England for a while, and I had the Belgian beers. I mean, they're delicious, because they know what they're doing, right? There's a lot of brewers here who just throw this, yeast in, and the stuff is vinegar, It's like, how can you drink this stuff? But people are like,
there are
it's
some
great.
here
It's
that
sour.
just throw them together, but I'll also say that we have some fantastic sour brewers in the U.S. as well. That we're seeing, stuff from Allagash. And
all right, exactly.
Here in Atlanta, Sweetwater Brewing, I think it was about a year and a half ago now, they opened a place they call the Woodlands, which is a barrel aging and wild ale facility. And they have a lot of oak French and American oak fooders in there.
Wow.
And they're doing some really nice sour beers. And I think restrained may be a good word, right, Brian? Nothing they do is like bracingly sour, right?
Not too bad. They're a little high on the acetobacter in some cases, but I mean, I like that. So it's a lot of wood character, and it's not going to peel the enamel off your teeth, but you're going to notice it for sure. Definitely more than most of your Berliners, especially those fruited Berliners.
But I personally love the wild ales that get the complex, the earthy tones and the funk and the earth and the sour, the little bit of balsamic notes and sometimes like an earthy mushroom. And then you age that in a wine barrel and you add some fruits to it, and you can just come up with a really lots of layers and depth and character to them. Just a really enjoyable beer. And I also enjoy, like we were talking about the Berliner Weiss that we did. I can still enjoy a good kettle sour. It's simplistic. It's just the lactobacillus souring this beer, but they can be really nice and crisp. And again, that's a great one for a little bit of fruit delivery there. Keep it restrained, make a nice sipping beer. There's something that's still good. We're calling our beer our last goodbye to summer because we're not ready to let go. But those beers are great for that warmer weather.
Yeah, those fruited Berliners are another hot trend. Everybody's doing those, but I can't let the wild and sour go by without giving a shout out to Orpheus, who took bronze for their Messaguse, it's Belgian sour. I forget the exact category.
Yeah.
But it was like a lambic. That's what it was, a lambic-esque type of beer. And
yeah, lambic and lambic style is the category.
There it is. Yeah, lambic style. Yeah. And I believe it's I Am Only Memories, and it's delightful. They also have another blended one that's, I think it's 2 years of blended lambic styles, and it's called Yesternow. And I mean, I like that nearly as much as Dry Fontaine. Nearly as much. It's a fantastic beer. So we definitely have some people around in the U.S. that have figured out that impressive Belgian sour game, and they're competitive.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
even looking at Russian River, I guess they were one of the first ones out there to do that. But Russian River makes some great ones. I love the stuff that Cascade's doing. You've got I can't believe I can't think of the name right now. The Wisconsin brewery. New Glarus in Wisconsin. So, yeah, if you want sour beer, there's some funky stuff out there, Mike, but there's some quality stuff out there as well.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say ATLgash because they're up near me here, and they make good stuff, and they know what they're doing. And a lot of people, like you had mentioned, those breweries, take the time, and it's just methodical, and they age it, and they put the fruit, and those beers are awesome, yeah.
That ATLgash Tiarna is still one of my favorite beers of all time. It's a wonderful beer, and that comes out occasionally down here. We get that, and I love it.
Yeah, we get barrels from them actually. They age, the Curio. I don't know if you had the Curio.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
So they age the Curio in these Jim Beam barrels, and then they sell them. So we take them, and then we'll throw 200-degree water in them and kill everything and flush it out, and it still smells delicious because the whiskey's been in there for 4 years. And then we just aged our strong ale in it, and man, everybody's loving this thing. It's delicious. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So, oh man, so we've been on this podcast for a long time, and I appreciate you guys coming on.
Sure thing.
It means a lot to me that, we sent you an email and you agreed. So that's awesome. And, what you're doing is really great for the beer industry and the craft beer industry. And I appreciate what you're doing. And we'll probably I'll meet you at the finish line at the.
That sounds good.
And we'll trade
the marathon.
We'll trade beers. But no, I appreciate you coming on. And, and where can people find you if they want to tune into you or go to your website? How do they do that?
You can listen on our website. All episodes are there streaming. We're also on all favorite big podcasting apps, Beer Guys Radio, and you follow us along on social media. We're Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere you look out there.
Or maybe in a local radio station near you.
And that's right. Yeah. We've got, just click on listen on our website. We've got our whole list of affiliates there.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate what you're doing. You have an awesome podcast, awesome show, and we'll meet. Our paths will cross one day. I know. But
thank you much, Mike. We appreciate you having us on.
I appreciate you coming on. So take care.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Yeah, that was Dennis and Brian Hewitt from Atlanta, Georgia, and Beer Guys Radio. It's great podcast. I love it. I love the structure, and they're on radio stations too. This is awesome. 13 stations in nine different states. Cool. A lot of good knowledge there. They've interviewed a load of brewers and people in the industry. A lot of good knowledge to share. So if you like this podcast and you like what we're doing, please go on iTunes. That's the only way we can get the word out there. That's the only way we can promote it and get other people to listen. We need reviews. We need ratings. That just helps us tremendously, and that's all I ask of you. Just go on iTunes and do that. Also, if you have friends that are interested in beer, or even if they're not interested in beer, we're trying to get them to be interested in craft beer. Share it with them, and we're doing 10X lately. I think it's great. Share it with 10 friends. That just helps us tremendously. And, we appreciate you guys listening. It means a lot to us. If you want to connect with us, we're on Craft Beer Storm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're trying to be all over the place. But, we're here for you guys. We'd love to hear feedback. If you got feedback, let us know. And we'll talk to you soon.